Want to ensure that your best ideas are heard by the right people in your organization. Improve your ability to speak up at work. In this education section, Speaking Up at Work, conducted by EIY Public Speaking and Professional Development, and Mr. Paul, our guest speaker will uncover the common mental barriers that keep professionals from speaking up at work, as well as the steps you can take to actively build your authority. We will also discuss how your childhood, cultural, and work experiences may have shaped your perception of good communication. Paul has consulted with Google, Citi, Twitter, Bloomberg, NBC News, and trained over 3,000 executives. An international architectural firm recently called on him to help train their employees and get a multi-million dollar project in New York City and a second huge project, Parks project in Australia. He made sure their presentations were authentic and persuasive. He's also an official member of Forbes Council in 2020. Hello everyone, my name is An and welcome you to the education section of EIY. Hello Paul.
Hello, Ann. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me here on the show.
Yeah, great, Mr. Paul. The first question that I have for you today that is, how important is it when we come to speaking up at work?
Well, I think that anyone's career is based on being able to promote either themselves, their ideas, their services, or their products. And I don't think that there's any shame in doing that. I mean, basically, if we want to move ahead, we need to show that we have the confidence to take on new responsibilities and new roles. And I think the easiest way to do that is simply by projecting your presence when you're in these opportunities, these meetings, which can often feel like you're held back or your point of view won't be respected if you do speak up. We understand that everybody suffers from this challenge, but being able to have the forward momentum, knowing where to go to generate that forward momentum, to be able to put yourself out there in a confident way, not in an arrogant or an aggressive way, but in an assertive and confident way, is a big plus. It's a big career boost. So I think that as opposed to not looking forward to meetings, I think the best thing we need to do is to look at them as opportunities for us to promote the things that we want to promote.
What do we need to show our presence at work, Mr.?
Well, what we need to do is, number one, even when we're not speaking, we need to be actively listening.
Yeah.
Because you never know where that opportunity is going to come to be able to add a contribution, to add a perspective. So I always say, have an idea, an agenda of what it is that you've been working on recently or want to promote, and understand what some of those key words are that would make an easy segue of your idea into the idea that is being discussed at the moment. And also, be aware that no matter what topic comes up or when you see an opportunity, there will always be a sense of you retracing back to that idea. And I know, having worked with a lot of individuals, the feedback that I get is that the moment has already passed. In other words, we were just talking about that 2 minutes ago. Oh, I'm too late to the party. That's not true. The idea is still in play. So make sure that you give yourself permission to retrace.
I see. Most of Vietnamese people are famous of being shy at work. It means that we don't dare to speak up at work because of the hierarchy in workplace. What is your advice for us to speak up at work, even though that sometimes we have some ideas to share, but we don't dare to do that?
Well, as far as not daring to do it, what I want to assure everyone is if you are a part of a corporate structure, there is a forward momentum that has to be maintained within that company, and new ideas are the lifeblood of that forward momentum. So not beyond just saying that it's a good idea to do it, it's actually a very practical idea to be very clear about delivering your ideas, because to the people who you do want to connect with, your superiors, let's say, they need to have a very short, clear idea of what it is that you want to get across. So I think often the same trepidation that we have about giving too many details, speaking too quickly, circling around the point without making the point, they really come to the surface when we're in those situations, and we can often convince ourselves not to do it because we don't have a right to do it. But you have to understand that every business needs the strengths of the individuals on the team to be able to really flourish. And even if it may seem on the surface that the recipient of what you're saying is not being as open-minded, still it is in the best interest of the company that you be able to get your idea across. Of course, I think that clarity is so important because of the massive amounts of information that we all hear on a daily basis.
You just share a new perspective towards speaking up at work. Speaking up at work is not only about ourselves, but it's also about the best interest of the organization, because it helps the organization to grow.
It does. And just to further clarify that idea, I always say that make sure you have a personal characterization of what it is you want to talk about. And try to avoid using words like, I think what I'd like to talk about with you today, or maybe if you have a minute, I could, don't use those flowery words to make you feel better about delivering a message, because all that does is put the listener into a position where they know that there's a lot of details coming and they're not going to be as receptive. So I always say to people in business, use a personal characterization. I use the term a bumper sticker, a very short phrase, to begin the idea. Because I think one of the important tools that we have to use that we don't often rely on is a listener's curiosity. Always remember that no matter if you're the boss or if you're the middle manager or if you're the new hire, you still listen to people speak in the same way as everyone else. We all have a certain sense of curiosity. It's why we like to hear stories. So make that opening statement about your idea or about yourself, make sure that it is short and very much to the point. And then you can explain it from there.
Do you have any example that we can start our statement to capture listeners' curiosity?
Sure. So let's say that I want to talk about, let's say I want to talk about leadership, the way that I feel about leadership and the development, about leadership development. Okay. So if I say to you, I would like to talk to you about leadership development. Okay, you have a certain response to that. Okay, I guess Paul's going to talk about leadership development. But notice the difference when I say, when it comes to being a leader, you have to start small. Notice the difference there, because your listening behaviors, your listening preference is, why did you just say that, Paul? Why did you just say you have to start small? I want to hear more. I can't help it. So even if it's a superior, I know it sounds like it's a little bit of a tripwire and it's a little tricky to do, but it really, really pays off. And it's one of those things that if you do it on a consistent basis and you get yourself accustomed to doing it, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, I saw one interesting way that you just did to our listeners here is to arouse our curiosity into your statement. because we just wonder why is it small.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. And that's the beauty of what I
Mm,
refer to as a bumper sticker, is
mm,
that it is bold
yeah.
and it always begs the question how, what, or why. Always.
Mm,
And so you have to know that it's there, and you have to be willing
mm,
to have people look at you like, not that they're not believing you, but they
mm,
want to hear more. So the look on their face, the reaction is, and you have to know that that's what you want them to do.
I
And then you
see.
get to explain. Now they want you to explain more. Suddenly, now you're the person who they are eager to hear
Mm,
from, not the person that they wouldn't necessarily choose to hear from. It
mm,
changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. You just shared with me a great point, that is that speaking up at work is not only about sharing an information, but it's also about how you can start your statement in around your listeners' curiosity,
Hmm.
so
Oh,
that
yeah.
they can ask more in to get further information from you.
Right, right. And really it puts the listener in a position of actually asking you for
Mm,
more details, maybe not for all of the details, but
mm,
for more details. So
mm,
I always refer to this, what I'm beginning to describe here, and there's a lot more detail to it, but it is very, very simple.
mm,
I like simplicity when it comes to methodology, but this is a template that I refer to as the vertical unfolding.
yeah.
And it's one that you can use in just about any situation because it
Mm,
does lean into listening behaviors,
mm,
which has really been the focus of my
mm,
teaching in earnest for the last couple of years. For many years, as a speech coach and then transitioning more into a public speaking coach, I
mm,
was working with people on diminishing accents, perhaps at their
yeah.
choosing,
Mm,
being able to give them more confidence, certainly, be able to
mm,
speak louder or speak slower,
mm,
whatever those things might be. But lately, it's been all business people wanting to gain more clarity. So
mm,
this template, the vertical unfolding, utilizes a bumper sticker. Then the
mm,
next level of it is 3 supportive reasons. And then the next level of it is the details upon
mm,
request. So it's pretty simple, but you have to get used to using it.
yeah.
It's good to know what the tools are, but then you have
Mm,
to figure out where the tools are so you can get them when you need them.
mm. Yeah, sure, mister. After you capture your listeners' curiosity already, what is the next step to share your idea?
Well, after you pique their curiosity, you give them the reason why you just
Mm,
said that. And
yeah.
like I said, you give them 3 reasons.
Mm,
So if I were to go back to the example I gave just a few minutes ago, when it
yeah.
comes to being a leader, you
Mm,
have to start small.
yeah.
You have to learn from others,
Mm,
you have to adapt to changes,
mm,
and you have to be willing to mentor along the way.
mm,
So there are my 3 reasons. Now, your curiosity may still be piqued and we'll keep going. But if
mm,
that's enough for you, if
mm,
let's say I'm speaking to my superior who hears from people like me
mm,
many, many times during the day, that may be enough. It may be, okay, that's an interesting idea. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Well, you've
mm,
just made a very positive impression in
mm,
just 45 seconds.
yeah.
That wasn't a lot of heavy lifting.
Mm, yeah,
And it
sure.
wasn't arrogant. It was just it's my perspective. It's my point of view. That's
Yeah.
all.
And it
Mhm.
left impression to your superior.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And really it's about confidence. I mean,
Mm,
for everyone who is who is on the journey, and by the way, as you know, on we're all on this journey to
mm,
get better at public speaking. It's really a matter of building up our confidence in
mm,
various situations. And as you already know, business, everything that you do in business is a form of public speaking.
sure.
So, and it
Yeah.
is a form of increasing your confidence so that you can speak in an authentic way, which
Mm,
begins the process of trust. And once there is a process that your listeners trust you're speaking authentically, they can begin to be in a position of being persuaded by what it is you have to say. So that first crucial step is being able to speak in a way that people know that you believe what it is that you're talking about and you're committed to your words.
Yeah, I can say that authenticity, simplicity, and clarity, those are the factors that really important in our business communication nowadays.
Okay.
People are looking for that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And I realize that very often
yeah,
we think about confidence as being just a mental game.
mm,
And I tell everyone that as much as we believe that when we're speaking, it's simply a thought that we speak about, a thought that we speak about,
mm,
speech is more of a full body expression. So
mm,
there are things you can do physically to give yourself more confidence, more of a sense of forward momentum, more of a
mm,
sense of control. It's
yeah,
not all of a mental game.
mm,
So you do need to utilize very deliberate breathing. You do need to utilize coordinated gesturing, even at a time when you may not feel confident enough to do those things. Those
mm,
are the physical lifelines that are going to give you the confidence that you need. So it's really a lot of it is speech as a full body expression.
yeah, sure. Not only your body language, but also your voice in what you are thinking here, so that you can articulate out.
Right.
Yeah. How can we speak up at work when our work culture doesn't encourage us to speak up? For example, whenever we say something, someone may judge us, or our boss doesn't like what we are saying.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what is your point on this?
Well, in terms of, you mean, in other words, if there is an unspoken policy,
Yeah,
or you're saying that there's a cultural norm that you
I
shouldn't
think
speak up?
my question is more about the cultural norm of an organization. The senior managers don't encourage the spirit of speaking up at work, even though we know that whenever the employees say something, it can be a great idea to help the organization grow further, like what we discussed. But the
Okay.
point is that the manager or the culture of the company doesn't support.
Okay. I
Yeah.
would say my best advice, my best general advice, and every situation is slightly different, but yet what I'm about to say
Yeah.
does apply to just about every situation that any of us, anyone would find themselves in. And that is, I would go back to relying on every individual, regardless of cultural norm, regardless of hierarchy within the corporation. We all listen in very similar ways.
Mm,
So, what I would do to quote unquote break the ice a little bit with an individual is to once again utilize curiosity. You do
mm,
have that listening bias that
mm,
your listeners have. So utilize it. If you're bringing up something that might be sensitive in nature, begin with words like, I'm curious about this.
mm,
In other words, you're creating the sense of you want to know a little bit more, whatever
mm,
that might be. If it is an uncomfortable topic, it might
mm,
be I'm curious about what happens in these situations, and allow that to allow the sense of curiosity to be
mm,
something that will pull you through that conversation. Because ultimately, again, we have to understand that company new ideas and interaction and collaboration are what makes companies thrive, not just following orders and staying in line.
mm. After we try so many ways, for example, we try to raise a question, like what you said, or we try to initiate many new ideas, but we keep being rejected by our supervisors. Do you think it is still worth trying for speaking up at work anymore, or should we choose another company in order to fit with our culture?
Well, it's interesting. There is there are ways of dealing with different communication styles.
Mm,
And without a doubt, there are different cultures around different companies.
mm,
And irregardless of the overall country that a company is in or the overall culture that a company subscribes to and
mm,
utilizes as their policy, still these companies, sometimes you do have to find a different situation if it's not
mm,
the one for you. And
yeah.
sometimes there are communication styles
Mm,
within individuals within that company that can not be a good fit. There are
mm,
ways of dealing with people who are aggressive or
yeah.
passive aggressive or
Mm,
submissive or manipulative. There are ways of doing that, but the
mm,
question for each individual becomes, for how long do you want to accommodate that? In other
mm,
words, if you are constantly attempting to communicate with this person and attempting to connect with them and have them
mm,
listen to you, but are denied over and over, provided that you've tried some of the tactics
mm,
that should be used in order to match up different communication styles, and also
mm,
recognizing your own,
yeah.
recognizing the way that you speak to other people and
Mm,
what the positive and negative
mm,
projections of that could be. As long as you have already exhausted all of those, then perhaps a decision to move to a different situation would be prudent.
the great point is that before we try to speak up, we better analyze the communication style of our listeners so that we can have different approaches.
Well, yeah, it's something that you will recognize, provided that you know that they are different, that
Mm,
we are all slightly different, the way that we speak to each other, the way that we hear information. I'm
mm,
always reminded of that when I have
mm,
conversations with my wife, that I hear it
mm,
in a different way than she does, and vice versa. It's just, the way that things happen. Yet
mm,
we have a very easy style where we communicate very, very well, but there are
mm,
always going to be some differences.
yeah,
Of
sure.
course, I'm not going to go join another company, so I like her company.
Yeah, right. And that lead to another question is like sometimes before we share our ideas with our supervisors or managers, we tend to feel tense and very anxious, very nervous before we speak
Sure.
about our ideas. What are some of recommendations that you can advise us in order to get over our anxiety?
Well, it goes back to that word that we've been kicking around now for a couple of minutes, and that's the idea of confidence and
Mm,
forward momentum.
mm,
So often, because of we know that we're going into a potential conversation that has a little bit of anxiety for us, or
yeah.
as you say, makes us feel slightly tense.
Mm,
We often play out the story before it has actually happened. In other
mm,
words, we're going to wait and see what they say.
mm,
But so much of getting that first idea across is being clear about the opening statement that you're going
mm,
to utilize.
yeah.
Now, if you have practiced, which many
Mm,
people don't practice
mm,
speaking out loud, they just play a really good game in their head. And
mm,
there are a lot of thoughts going on in your head when you're in that situation. And there is always the thought of, ooh, how am I going to start this? How am I going to initiate this conversation?
mm,
That should be worked out in the beginning. There should be clarity about what your bumper sticker is. To go back to the term that I used earlier, you should know what that is, because
mm,
you should know what your agenda is going in to that meeting. And going into that meeting, the agenda is never, I hope he or she likes me.
mm,
Because remember, you have a different responsibility. You have a different agenda. You want to get an idea across.
mm,
If the idea is promoting you, then be
mm,
clear about that. If it's
mm,
promoting an idea, then be clear about that. If it is bringing to light a complaint, then be clear about that as
mm.
well. That's
Yeah,
just me.
very insightful. be clear about your agenda before you come to the meeting with your manager.
Right. And make it a personal characterization, and also explore utilizing some of those words. If it is something, if it is a topic, perhaps a business complaint of some kind, use the word curious. I'm curious about this, or I've been thinking about this, or I'd like to hear your opinion about whatever it might be. Again, curiosity is a wonderful thing. Asking somebody, saying to someone that you want to hear, that you respect their opinion, is basically flattery, and that'll get you a long way as well.
Yeah.
So it's the
Yeah.
language, right? It's the language that
Right.
we use, and that's the operative word, is use. If we don't get accustomed to speaking these words out loud, you never want to be surprised by the sound of your own voice when you are in these situations. So I'm famous for saying that I'm very adaptable and I'm very flexible, but I'm famous for saying I like to be prepared to be spontaneous.
I like that quote.
Yeah.
I like to be prepared to be spontaneous.
That's right. If I have
Great.
a base to work from, if I have an idea, like I said, a bumper sticker, if I have three main points that I want to get across, I can then ad lib from there because I know what my structure is. And I know that if by returning to that structure, my
Yeah.
point will be made, and the takeaway that I want the listener to take away, they will possess by the end of that interaction.
Yeah. Awesome. I think now we come to the last question of our live stream today.
Oh, the last question? Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, no, please. All right. Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah, I think that everyone, while you are watching our video here, if you have any question, just comment and then I will help to collect it and I will send to Mr. Paul later. So the last question is to Asian culture. Is it embarrassing for women to become an upstander and report harassment to the HR department? Because actually, like for me, I don't like to report my case as being harassed by someone because it's very embarrassed. So how can we empower our employees to be an upstander?
Well, I think we've already been building to the answer for this question and many of the things that we've been talking about so far. And that is, if you, as opposed to necessarily pointing out in the opening statement that there's somebody who you want to uh, put a claim that there was something that went wrong, rather than doing that right away, you might want to use that phrase, "I'm curious about," or "I'm curious about what the company suggests that we do in a situation like this." So in
Yeah.
other words, you are piquing the listener's curiosity a little bit. You're not just coming right out and saying, "This person did this to me." No, what you're saying is, I'm curious about what the company's policy is when an individual is bullying somebody else, whatever that might be. So then you get to feel, number one, what the feedback is from the person you're speaking with, what the uh, what the response is to the words that you're saying, and you get a feel for how you should proceed further in that conversation. Because I understand there's a little bit of a fear about coming across in too harsh a tone, but you also don't want to come across in a way that you may not be certain that you feel this way. You want to be clear. You need to have that clarity. So even though this is a very tender subject, so you're asking a very loaded question, and I want to be careful about my response, but
Yeah.
yet I do want to be able to give everyone good advice for moving forward. So that would probably be, in a nutshell, what I would suggest. And again, the details of that interaction would be something that could be looked into and prepared for in much more uh, with much more scrutiny.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Paul. Yeah, so I learned so many things from our live stream here, and I think that our viewers also learned so many things from you, Mr. Paul. The first
Great.
thing is, let's start with your speaking up by saying I'm curious about, or you can even capture someone's curiosity. That is the one way that you can speak up at work. The second thing is I like to be prepared in order to be spontaneous. I like that quote.
Good.
And finally, be clear about your agenda. That is your intention when you come to the meeting and you would like to initiate an idea with your boss. You may want to prepare in advance and know what is your objective.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Those are excellent takeaways.
Do you have any final message to share with our viewers here?
Well, I would say that, again, your forward momentum is something that you can generate. You can
Mm,
do it mentally in preparation and should do it mentally in preparation. And you can course correct physically when you're in that situation.
mm.
Don't leave the physical side of speech out of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very meaningful. And thank you everyone for joining us on the live stream session, education session of EIY tonight. And I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.
Take care,
Thank you,
Anne.
Mr.
Bye-bye.
Paul.